So ignoring your triggers only leads to bigger emotional eating episodes. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And today I wanted to chat a little bit about triggers and how to start recognizing your triggers around your emotional eating and why when you ignore them, they become bigger and you get taken over by your emotional eating. So triggers are something that are really interesting when you're an emotional eater. It is usually one of the reasons that you feel like you have to go and emotionally eat. So you might be triggered at different times of the day, around different people. There's a lot of different reasons you might be triggered. But for me, when I'm looking at your emotional eating triggers, what I'm trying to find for clients is their emotional trigger. So before we can find the true emotional trigger, we have to do a few things. And this is something I learned in my own journey when I was trying to figure out my own emotional eating. I just felt I was hungry all day. I seemed to not realize when I was emotionally hungry or truly hungry. It just felt like there was no stop button. And when I realized that there were different layers to this pattern, it started to become clearer and clearer. And one of the keys that helped me really start seeing where my true triggers were was to really start discerning true from emotional hunger. And so when I was able to start understanding this is true hunger versus emotional hunger, it started to make sense to me. And so if you want to dive deeper into that concept, you can download. I have a free guide called What Are You Truly Hungry For? You can find out more at the link below. But to sort of share with you, when we are emotional eaters, we need to start understanding what true hunger feels like in our body, what emotional hunger feels like in our body. Because when we can start discerning the two, we can start seeing our triggers and we can start catching them. And so for me, it's not just sometimes we think like it doesn't matter what kind of food we're eating throughout the day, that doesn't impact our emotional eating, but it does. If we are eating foods that are, creating more hunger in us, they're not completely satisfying our hunger on 4 levels. So they're not making us feel satisfied in terms of the amounts of food we're eating, the amount of energy, the taste, and the nutrients. We're going to feel hungry because we actually haven't nourished our body. And that's something we need to start learning. And so when I'm working with clients inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program, that's why we are learning about true nourishment. Because if you're starving yourself throughout the day, you have a diet mentality, you're not really looking at how food feels in your body, or you don't know those cues, you're going to create binging out of restriction. And binging out of restriction is sort of mixed in with when you're actually emotionally eating. We have to look for those deeper emotional eating triggers. And so when we're able to truly nourish our body, and we can tell that we're doing that by satisfying our hunger, but also looking at how we're digesting foods, how we're feeling after a meal, and then really seeing when we're triggered and starting to slow down that process so we can see our emotional triggers. So when we're able to start seeing our emotional triggers, this is where we can almost get into stopping our emotional eating. So we want to become better and better at catching our triggers, because once you start seeing your pattern, you might be more aware of when you're triggered. And it's not to say you start avoiding all your triggers. So maybe a person triggers you, a place, a time of the day. What I find with clients is that when we follow this trigger down to the root, there is something that happened when you're very young, an unresolved event. So this unresolved event left you feeling it wasn't complete for you. And that's what creates trauma. It just means you had an unresolved situation or event that left you with a lot of emotions that you didn't process. And so we need to go back and sort of find that and resolve it at the root and create a new way for it. Because the way you dealt with the discomfort of that was by going to food. And so that became your way of dealing with discomfort and distress, or your way of coping. And so I believe that we don't need to cope. When we really get into these triggers, we can start resolving them. And every time a trigger comes up, if we have the tools to go in and get to the root, we lessen the trigger It no longer comes up because we start healing the root of it. And so in that moment, we won't go to food. We'll actually know how to meet our true needs. Because when a trigger comes up, it's trying to get our attention to do something. So let's say every evening you're triggered into your emotional eating, because by that time, at the end of the day, maybe if you know you've nourished yourself, you've eaten enough throughout the day, and this emotional eating is coming up, it's because you have more space for these emotions to come up. It might have been happening throughout the day, but you were able to distract yourself, or you were busy, or you had something else and you didn't have the time or space to look at it, but it doesn't mean the trigger goes away. That energy builds and builds and builds till the end of the day, where now the emotion is coming up. And if you have kids, so I have a 9-year-old son, at the end of the day, when it's bath time, that's when I hear all the stories about school, because throughout the day, he's busy, he's running around. Sometimes if it's a bigger event, I hear about it, but it's usually at the end of the day or in a Sunday evening that I hear about all of the little things that happen that are bothering him, because he finally has the space to share it. Because we lead such busy lives, there's so many things happening, and most of us, we forget it happened, we're not attuned, and we don't go in and start resolving these triggers that come up. And so they build and build until, for us, if you've been an emotional eater, you'll emotionally eat. You'll almost unconsciously go towards food. You won't recognize, you'll just feel uncomfortable, and there's all this in your head that you just go to the food. So this is something that we need to really start becoming aware. And this is something that I'm doing with clients inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program. We're becoming really aware of our patterns so we can see and start seeing, I'm emotionally eating, I am getting triggered, I didn't notice this. And the sooner we can catch it, and when you're in the program, you're looking at it more often daily. So you can see with your patterns around food when you're triggered, you can see how it's coming up. And this is so powerful and empowering, because you can start looking at what is going on in your life currently triggering that, so that you can get to the root of it. And when we resolve the root, you can start seeing your life, your day-to-day life, in a clearer way. And you can start making better decisions. Usually because we have these old patterns that we use food to cover up when we feel disempowered, or we feel like we need to people please, or we have these unhealthy behaviors, we use food to cover it up. So we don't realize, maybe in a work situation, we're being taken advantage of, we're tired at work, or we haven't slept enough. We use food to cover up all of these symptoms that are happening. Maybe we didn't take a break at work. Maybe we don't have a very healthy work environment. Maybe we want to be in a different space. Maybe we need a vacation. There's all of these things happening. But when we put food on top of it, it doesn't allow us to fully live our lives, because our emotions, these triggers that are coming up, these emotions that are coming up are telling us what we need to shift in our life. And so our triggers are really powerful, and we need to learn how to find them. So once we find our triggers, this is where we do the deeper work. And so for clients, we do the deeper work by getting into the root of this pattern, which is in the body. I use a specific process, somatic meditations with different psychotherapy tools to really get into the root in the body. It's a very powerful modality so that we can resolve it at the root. And because we resolve it at the root in the body, you feel a physical shift in your body. So when you're holding on to this pattern, your body, your nervous system is sort of in an agitated stress state. And when we resolve it, we move into ease and peace and calm in our body. We naturally become more confident and easeful and peaceful, and food no longer has power over us because we've met our true needs. And it's not about controlling food. When we get to this place, our body will start to want to eat nourishing foods, want to have fruits and vegetables, because we understand that those foods won't ever give us that deep relief like meeting our true needs will. So this is why triggers are so powerful in this process, and learning to find them. But with emotional eaters, it's not a matter of just, I'm triggered every time I eat, or I don't like what I'm eating. We have to look at making sure that you're nourishing your body and you're giving yourself all that you need, so we can really tell when you're triggered into your emotional eating. So that means we're moving through, you nourishing yourself, moving through a lot of diet mentality, limiting beliefs around food, restriction around food, triggers around your body. You might be triggered into you don't accept your body, you're judging yourself, and that triggers you. We need to look at, let's say, not getting enough sleep. It'll trigger more eating the next day because we've sort of dysregulated our hormones. And so we need to look at all of these factors, making sure that we're physically supporting the body before we dive in and see where we might need to emotionally get into those triggers. So we don't want to deal with everything when you're an emotional eater as only emotions. We want to put in these other strategies to make sure you're nourishing yourself on other levels. And so from there, these triggers are going to help you dive deeper and create more expansion for you. You're going to be able to get into that root to shift your body from feeling, uncomfortable, really agitated, stressful, to that ease and peace and confidence around food and in your body. And so in the Emotional Eating Evolution program, that's what we're doing. We're doing this through 3 areas. So we're making sure you're nourishing yourself, you're getting to body acceptance, and we're doing the deeper work around the triggers with emotional wellness. And this combined really gets to the root of your emotional eating in a sustainable way so that you have sustainable change. You have a transformational change. So if you have any questions about what I've shared with you today, please let me know. If you'd like to dive in deeper, the first step, like I mentioned, is to start learning to discern true from emotional hunger. And so I have a free guide below you can download. And if you are interested in the Emotional Eating Evolution program, this is my 12-week container full of support, guidance, the in-depth tools, and the step-by-step process to resolve your emotional eating from the root. You can find out more at the links below. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.